Well, before too long, half of these poles are going to be a trailer. The stage I'm at now is squaring these off, or rather miter cutting these things, and that's the 8-foot length, so these are 12-foot guys. So we're going to miter cut the outer 4x8 box, and then inside of that have the support system for the suspension, and then the tongue is the tongue and suspension are recycled off of this trailer's former self. So it's a bit crowded in here, but there's my suspension. The leaf springs are a little beefy for my needs, but it'll be fine. And here is my tongue and coupler. So this, it's got a bit of metal I want to cut off of it, but it's a solid piece, about 85 inches long, so that works great for me. 48 inches of which will be underneath the trailer, and then the front, about 37 inches, are going to be between the coupler and the front of the trailer. So when even if I jackknife the thing, the trailer body will still clear the corner of the vehicle, either one that I use. Okay, I got these pipes all taped off, and now it's just a matter of cutting where I've marked them, and I'm just going to, these are miter cuts effectively. I didn't get a chop saw, I'm just going to use my angle grinder because I don't really have that many cuts to make overall, like less than 15 or 20 or so. So I'll get these guys all cut up, lay them out, and then once we're square I can start tack welding. Alright, after this first absolutely dreadful corner, which I've squared and then tacked, so I'm going to have to fill in that gap. Ugh! Decided to switch, and instead of using a grinder, I'm now using this reciprocating saw. And I'm able to mount the blade in sideways, which I like, because I can now work really close to the floor, because I am working directly on the floor. So given that tool, I can do much nicer corners. Nice mitered corner. So then I can use my builder's square here to note that it is perfectly square. Like, these magnets are great, but they're not quite big enough. So combined with this, I can tell that my work is ready. So I'll tack this up, do all 4 of them actually, and then I'll make sure that that lousy corner's clean. Then I'll have a nice square box to work with. Alright, I got the 4 corners tacked up, and the 2 ways you got to measure this thing. One, I have to measure that my side to side is exactly 4 feet, and my end to end is exactly 8 feet for each of the 4 sides. And then you got to measure across the diagonals to make sure that they're the same. So having done the measurements, everything is within like a 64th of an inch. It's super, super close to being either 4 feet or 8 feet. But I am off by a little less than half an inch on the diagonal. So the diagonal that you can see here is off by, it's about less than half an inch, or about 1.5 centimeters short. So the adjustment for that would be to give it either a pull or a push. And what I have are, I forget what these are. I think they're like old bed frame rails or something, but they're telescopic. One is nested inside the other. So what I'm going to do is just wedge this thing as I have it, and then give it a bit of a push and clamp it with a vice grip just so it can't move, it can't shorten, and then finish up the welds. That way I know that I've got a square foundation to work with. However, I'm going to flip it first, because I did already kind of close up these joints. So I figured out a slightly better way of making this square. They're relatively equally good by themselves, pushing it out on the shorter side or pulling it in on the longer side. The problem is I can't weld cross members when I've got that metal pole laying through the middle. So this is just one of those garden variety ratchet straps, and I've got this thing holding it, what is it, I think it's like a 107 1/4, and I pulled it just slightly inside of that, so I can weld a cross beam on, or 2, and then I'll just let it go, and then it'll slightly give a bit and be back to square. It's only off by about a 1/4 inch, but if I can help it along, why not? So let's get back to cutting. We're using a reciprocating saw now, as it works a little more cleanly, leaves a lot less mess around, and we got to cut a couple of lengths. I think 45.5 inches I need to go across the middle, and see what we're looking at.